It was a rainy Tuesday night when the phone rang. Nothing unusual except it was a landline, one he hadn't used in years. He nearly ignored it. But something about the ring felt off. Longer, deeper. Like it had traveled through something it shouldn't. He picked up. The voice on the other end paused, then said, "Don't panic, I don't have much time, I'm you from the future." He froze. It was his voice. Older, slower. There was static, like the voice was crawling through a broken radio. "I know this sounds crazy," it said. "But something's coming, something you set in motion." Every instinct told him to hang up. But curiosity, that old enemy, kept him listening. He asked the only thing he could. "How do I know this is real?" The voice answered with details no one else could know. The scar behind his right ear. The thing buried in the backyard when he was 12. The name of the girl he never told anyone he loved. "Now listen carefully," it said. "There's a window only 3 days after that, the loop closes." Loop. His mind tried to reject it. But his gut whispered a different truth. Something was very, very wrong. The call cut out. No click, no goodbye. Just silence. He stared at the receiver, the dial tone humming like a threat. Outside, the wind picked up. Something shifted in the air. He looked down. The line was still connected. But ice ran through his veins. Had he really just spoken to himself? Or was something playing tricks on him? Something that knew exactly what to say. He spent the night pacing. What if it was a prank? What if he was losing it? But sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard that voice again. His voice, but hollow. By morning, the call still echoed in his head. And then came the note. Slipped under his door. No return address. No handwriting. Just 4 words typed in bold. "You've already started it." He tore the envelope open. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It was him, older, standing in front of a payphone that hadn't existed in town for 10 years. His hands trembled. It wasn't just the call. Something or someone was orchestrating this. He turned the photo over. A date was written on the back. Tomorrow. The exact time, 4:16 p.m. His heart sank. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. He skipped work, took the day to retrace his steps. How could someone know this much about him? How could he sound so certain? He found himself back at the park. The one from the photo. The payphone wasn't there. Hadn't been for years. But when he checked behind the bushes, there it was, covered in ivy. Rusty, real, exactly where it shouldn't be. It rang. Once, twice. He didn't move. The same low, buzzing tone. He let it ring a 3rd time, then answered. The voice was waiting. "You found it." No shock, no greeting. Like this had all happened before. "Listen closely," the voice continued. "There's a version of you that didn't, that ignored the call, that died because of it." His mouth went dry. This was no warning. It was a second chance. A sharp pain stabbed behind his eyes. Flashes, a hospital bed, smoke, screams. For a second, he wasn't here. He was somewhere else. A place half remembered and half buried. The voice crackled. Some memories leak across timelines. He grabbed the pole of the payphone to steady himself. "You're not going crazy," it said. "You're waking up." But waking up to what? He still didn't understand. He rushed home, looked in the mirror. For a moment his reflection lagged just a beat behind. It blinked, but he hadn't. Sweat prickled his neck. Was he cracking? Or was something cracking through? He ran cold water, splashed his face. But when he looked up again, the reflection was gone. Just glass. Empty. His own face returned seconds later, smiling, when he was. That night he found it. A red notebook in his closet. He didn't remember owning it. But the handwriting was his. Dozens of pages, each marked with times, coordinates, fragments of phrases. Loop initiated. Third iteration failed. Call rejected equals death. On the last page, break the cycle or become it. And then the final warning. Don't trust the next voice. It came 2 hours later. Another call. Same line, but a different voice. Still familiar. Still his, but colder, more calculated. Forget what he told you, it said. He failed, I didn't. Panic rose in his chest. This wasn't a call. It was a war between versions of himself, each fighting for control of the timeline. And the terrifying part was, he didn't know which one was telling the truth. The second voice gave him instructions. Burn the notebook. Destroy the payphone. Erase the evidence. Trust me, it said, you'll thank me later. But the first voice had warned about this. What if that version wanted the loop to continue? He stood in the kitchen, notebook in hand, match ready. 2 paths, 1 flame, 1 truth, and only one version of him could be right. The clock blinked 2:16 p.m. Exactly 2 hours until the time in the photo. He needed answers fast. He flipped through the red notebook again, looking for anything he'd missed. One page had a smudge, a set of numbers, a phone number. Not his, not local. He dialed it. Static. Then a voice answered. But this time it wasn't his. It was a woman. Soft, measured. You shouldn't have called this line, she said. This means you've reached stage 3. Stage 3 of what? Your reality is destabilizing, she continued. The next 24 hours are critical. Observe, but do not interfere. Before he could ask anything else, she hung up. Now there were 3 voices. 3 pieces of a puzzle that somehow he had already built and broken. He pulled out his old answering machine, dusty, untouched. Checked the tape from last night. But the call wasn't there. Instead, whispers, garbled audio, words he couldn't fully make out except one phrase. You are the breach. Chills ran down his spine. It wasn't just time unraveling. It was him, his voice, his actions. Something had started leaking through. And now it wasn't just speaking. It was listening. At dusk, he saw someone watching him. A man in a gray coat standing across the street. Motionless. When he looked again, the man was gone. But a flyer had been slipped under his windshield. A map of the town with 3 locations circled in red. No names. No instructions. Just a date scrawled on the bottom. Tomorrow. Whatever game he was in. It was now moving without him. He drove to the first spot at sunrise. An old railway bridge long abandoned. At the center, something glinted. A metal tag bolted into the wood. It read, Iteration 5. He reached for it, but a siren wailed in the distance. Too precise. Too timed. He backed away slowly, heart pounding. Whatever had marked this place had done it before. Many times before. Back at the overgrown payphone, he searched for answers. Nothing new until he opened the coin slot. Inside was a key, wrapped in paper. 3 digits 42. He didn't know what it opened, but deep down part of him did. The second voice had mentioned a locker, a storage unit he'd never rented. But the number matched. And if what waited there was real, he was already too deep to turn back. The storage unit was on the edge of town. He'd never seen it before. No cameras, no staff. Just rows of silent doors. He found 42. The kite turned. Inside, a suitcase and a recorder still warm. He pressed play. His voice filled the air, speaking from weeks ahead. I hope this reaches you earlier than last time. If not, I'm already dead again. He wasn't just looping time. He was looping death. Inside the suitcase were dozens of cassette tapes, each labeled with a date and a version. V1 through V12. He played one at random. A voice his screamed, "It's in the mirror, don't look too long." Another tape, calm, defeated. "If you're hearing this, I gave up, maybe you won't." Each version had tried. Each had failed. He was the 13th. Lucky or cursed. Either way, something wanted him to break the cycle or become it. He scrubbed through the latest tape, V13. Near the end, something glitched. The voice stuttered. Then another voice overlapped. A whisper, not his. They're listening through the loops. Not just a paradox. A prison. Something was watching from outside the iterations. Using him as the signal. He shut the tape off. Silent, for now, but the line between the watcher and the watched was wearing thin. That night the clock stopped. Every single one. Watches, phones, microwave. All frozen at 4:16 p.m. The time from the Polaroid. He stared at the red numbers glowing on his wall. They didn't blink, didn't tick, as if time had been paused only for him. He blinked, and for a moment, the world outside was frozen too. He wasn't in a loop anymore. He was outside of it. He opened the door. The man in the gray coat was there again. Closer this time. You've reached the edge, the man said. His voice wasn't human. Not distorted, just wrong. Like it was being translated, live. You're about to see what the others couldn't. The man held out a small device. Record nothing, speak less. Then vanished, leaving behind only a scent. Burnt ozone and copper. Later that night, he turned on the device. It hummed, then projected light into the air. A map, not of geography, but time, spirals, cracks. One marked primary rift, origin breach. It pulsed like a heartbeat, and it led back to his own house. Back to the moment he answered that first call. He hadn't started the loop accidentally. He was the origin. He followed the pulse. Each step closer to home, his vision blurred. Past moments flickered beside him like shadows. Fights, regrets, a smile he'd forgotten. He entered the living room, and the map blinked out, but the hum remained. From under the floorboards, he pried them open. A second landline hidden, hooked into nothing, and yet it began to ring. Soft, slow. The first call had never stopped. He picked up. This time it wasn't a voice. Just breathing. Shallow trembling. Then, I made the wrong choice. It was still him, barely. Don't follow the rift, don't believe the next voice, it's not you. Then the line cut. Another version. One that hadn't made it. How many of him had failed? And why was he still alive? The clocks restarted. Exactly at 4:16 p.m. And everything outside the house moved again. But slower, as if time was buffering. He stared at the mirror. Something shifted behind the reflection. Not a person, not a shadow, just motion. Like the world he saw wasn't quite real anymore. Not a glitch, a boundary, and he was the one pressing against it. The red notebook had a hidden flap. Inside one USB. He plugged it in. A single file 13A final WAV. He pressed play. It was him again. But this time calm. Too calm. You don't remember writing this, but you will. If you're hearing this, they haven't found you yet. The rift is open. Go to the cabin. Cabin. He didn't own one. But someone thought he should. He drove 3 hours north. No destination. Just instinct. And then there it was. A cabin by the lake, rotting but familiar. He'd been here before. Long ago. Inside, the dust was undisturbed except one table. Clean, ready. On it, a folded paper. You made it further this time. No signature. No date. Only a mirror nailed to the wall. Cracked and humming. He stood before the mirror. Waited. Nothing. Then the cracks shifted. Not physically, visually. Like something behind the glass moved. His reflection blinked, then stayed frozen. Not him. Another version. Then from behind, a voice whispered. His own. You don't belong here, you're off sequence. He turned around. Nobody. When he looked back, the reflection was gone. Only the crack remained. Night fell. He lit the fireplace to warm the cabin. But as the flames rose, words appeared inside them. Faint flickering. You've been here 13 times. Then, only one version survives. The fire roared. Images appeared, glimpses of his other selves. Running, screaming. Burning. He stumbled back. Who was choosing who survived? Was it him? Or something using him as a filter? A knock at the cabin door. He opened it. The man in the gray coat again. But closer now. This time no eyes. Just skin where they should have been. You've attracted attention, the man rasped. Time is trying to erase you back. Then he placed a coin in his hand. One side blank. The other marked mirror 14. What happens now? He asked. But the man was already gone. At midnight, the mirror pulsed. He saw flashes, new images. A different version of him. Standing in a hospital hallway. Holding a baby. Crying. Then darkness. A word carved into the glass, 14. Was this the next loop? A path he hadn't taken. Or one he was about to. And if so, was he the one creating these echoes? Or following them? Back inside the red notebook, a new page had appeared. Fresh ink, written in his own hand. Fracture imminent, core identity unstable. He hadn't written it yet. But he would. Soon, suddenly his memories shifted. His mother's name gone. His first pet blurred. Time wasn't just looping. It was rewriting him from the inside out. He was no longer the original. But which version was? He looked at his hands. A small scar appeared that hadn't been there before. A memory of falling never happened, yet now it had. He opened his phone camera. The face staring back had his eyes. But not his jawline. The loop was merging timelines. Rewriting. Version over version. And he wasn't syncing correctly. Soon he might not remember which he really was. In the cabin basement, he found a hidden door. Behind it, a room lined with soundproof foam. No furniture, only walls, mirrors, and an old reel recorder. Tapes labeled, Interviews versions 112. He played one. Voices screamed, begged, whispered confessions. Each one believed they were the real version. And all of them had failed. Was this a test? Or a trap? The mirror in the room pulsed again. He stepped close. His reflection smiled. Then moved without him. You're late, it said. His mouth stayed shut, but the voice continued. You always think you're the first, you're the last. Cracks formed on the glass, but from the inside, the reflection raised its hand and reached through, touching him, cold, real. Then everything went white. He awoke in a white corridor, walls humming, floors smooth, unfamiliar. No doors, no windows, just a voice from above, his own, but robotic. You've entered the fold, all versions exist here, identity is a suggestion. Then one sentence that chilled him. You are not the first version to escape. He wasn't alone. And whatever this place was, it wasn't meant to be seen. He walked forward. Glass panes lined the walls. Behind each another him. Sleeping, standing, crying. Hundreds. Some wore hospital gowns. Others held weapons. One was missing half his face. Each paused when he passed, as if aware, as if connected. He wasn't just a man in a loop. He was the archive, the experiment, the observer and the observed. Then a new voice spoke. Older, measured. You were never meant to make it this far. Not his voice, but still familiar. This began with one decision, one phone call, one chance to avoid pain. The air shifted. Time pulsed. Instead, you chose to answer, and now we are legend. He fell to his knees. Whatever he was part of, it had never been about saving himself. Lights dimmed. An alarm sounded low and inhuman. Red text flashed across the wall. Loop stability failure, collapse imminent. He grabbed the nearest panel. A keypad blinked. He typed in the cabin's mirror code, mirror 14. A door appeared. Just one. He stepped through. Into darkness. The system was crashing. Reality was purging him. Only one version would remain when it restarted. The door sealed behind him. Silence. Then a single chair. A screen dropped down. It showed footage of him. From every version. Living, dying, regretting. The final screen faded to black. Then a line of text. Choose which version continues. But there was no input. Just a timer, counting down. Whatever decided wasn't him. The loop would choose. And his fate hung in that silence. Voices filled the chamber. All his. Arguing, pleading. One begged to end it. Another laughed manically. Then silence. A mechanical voice whispered. Consensus reached. The chair locked his arms down. Cold needles pierced his spine. Data transferred. Identity overwritten. He screamed, but not in pain. In loss, his memories were fading. He wasn't the winner. He was just a carrier. Eyes opened. Sunlight. A bed. His room. Normal. But his mind clear. Too clear. He checked his phone. No calls. No strange notes. No memory of loops. Except when he looked in the mirror. His reflection blinked twice. Too fast. He lined in. And it whispered, You won for now. Loop 14 had begun. And this time, it would go deeper than ever before. He tried to move on. Word coffee, friends. But everything felt staged. Too perfect. Traffic lights always green. Strangers smiled too long. And the weather, exactly like the day of the first call. He checked the calendar. It was March 14th. Again, the same date from the Polaroid. The loop hadn't ended. It had just changed form. His inbox had one unread message. No sender, no subject. Just two words. Still watching. He hovered over delete, but the email vanished on its own, then reappeared, then vanished again, each blink faster than the last, until the screen froze. All emails gone, except one attachment. Audio file call 0 MP3. The file wouldn't open, but he didn't need to hear it. He remembered it, every word. He walked past the bakery. Same woman dropping her purse. Same man helping her. Again and again. By the third time, he didn't even blink. This wasn't life. It was playback, a loop pretending to be freedom. And he was the only one noticing. Lord, the only one meant to. He got home. The mirror was back. The one from the cabin. No cracks, but behind the glass, movement. A reflection brushing its teeth even though he was. Then it looked straight at him. Mouthed a single word. Dig. He tore up the floorboards again. Nothing, but then, a thump, from below. Something was buried under the house. Something left by a version before him. Under layers of dirt he found it. A voice recorder. Old, rusted. He pressed play. Static. Then breathing. This version didn't last long, the voice said. Too much awareness too soon. Then a scream. His. Cut off. He dropped the device. Had he recorded that, or was it yet to come? The loop didn't just repeat events. It recycled outcomes. His watch spun wildly, then stopped at 4:16. Again, but this time so did everything else. Birds froze in the sky. Leaves paused mid-fall. The reflection in the window mouthed words he couldn't hear. Then time snapped forward. But he hadn't moved. He'd been left behind, out of sync, and in the background, he could hear versions of himself whispering, arguing, choosing what came next. His phone rebooted on its own. No apps, only one screen. Protocol 14.3 activated. Below it a countdown. 23 hours. Then it displayed a new file. /reset/human core 14 back. It wasn't just restarting time. It was preparing to overwrite his mind. To delete this version. He needed to stop the reset. But how do you fight something that thinks it is you? At the library he saw her. A girl from a memory that didn't exist anymore. A version where they'd loved. Where he'd died trying to save her. But she didn't recognize him. Just smiled, then whispered, "I remember you briefly," and walked away. That version had been erased. But fragments still bled through. Memories too stubborn to vanish. That night the mirror pulled him in. No resistance, just acceptance. He landed in a long hallway. Doors on each side. Each marked with a single word. Regret, silence, violence, escape. He opened one. Saw himself walking away from the first call. Living a normal life. Dying of cancer. Peaceful. Forgotten. Then closed the door. Choices had consequences. Even the ones never made. Back in his bathroom, the mirror no longer showed him. Only static. Like a dead TV channel. He reached toward it. His hand passed through. Cold, weightless, and something pulled. Not to kill him. To replace him. A hand reached out from the other side. His hand. But this time, it was in control. He hadn't survived the loop. He had become it. He woke up in a white room. 12 chairs surrounded him. All occupied. By him. Versions young, old, broken, cold. Each silent. Each waiting. Then the 13th chair appeared. Empty. The one meant for him. He sat. A screen lowered. One sentence. Only one version proceeds. Then they all looked at him, as if they already knew how it would end. One version stood. The soldier. You failed us all. Another, the addict. You kept answering the damn call. The one with scars. You brought this on yourself. He stood, voice shaking. I didn't choose this. But they all laughed. You did every time. The loop wasn't punishment. It was consensus. And no, they would vote on who deserved to become the final hymn. Each version stepped forward, one by one, placed a coin in a bowl. Some chose him. Most did not. The bowl glowed faintly, then darkened. His coin was last. He stared at it, cold, familiar, blank on both sides. He dropped it in. A single chime rang out. Decision sealed, and the room began to shake. Alarms blared, walls fractured, light bled through the cracks in reality. One by one, the other versions dissolved. Not in pain, in peace, as if they were never real to begin with. His body pulsed, his memories merged. Every version, every choice, now inside one mind. The loop wasn't closing. It was compressing. A screen lit up. Just one phrase. Call yourself one last time. He picked up the old landline beside him. Dialed the number he knew too well. It rang. Then, his voice, younger, scared. The first call. Who is this? He whispered back. Someone who made it through. Then paused. Don't answer next time. And hung up. The loop could only end if someone refused to begin it. Light swallowed everything. He felt time compress like breath in a sealed room. Then reverse. Memories untangled. The cabin dissolved. Mirrors cracked inward. One word echoed. Nullified. The loop didn't break with force. It rewrote itself by removing the choice. And with that, he was free, or so he thought. He woke in a small apartment. No mirror, no landline, a different life, but it felt like a memory. Photos of places he'd never visited. People he didn't know. Yet something in him whispered, this was always yours before the breach. Peaceful, unremarkable, safe. But when he blinked, one picture frame cracked. Not reality, just another layer. And the loop was waiting underneath. He touched the cracked photo. It blinked, then shifted. The same street, same clothes, but no one else around. Just him, alone, always. He stepped outside. Time stuttered, like a bad connection. And in the sky, a phone rang. Somewhere, someone answered. The loop wasn't bound by time. It lived in choices. And someone had just made another. One last voice played. His voice, but from far ahead. You can't destroy the loop. You can only exit it by never being chosen again. The only escape was erasure. Total, not death. Oblivion. No legacy. No memory. Could he choose that? Could anyone? And then, a silence he had never heard before. Not peace, not horror, just absence. He stood in the mirror one last time. No cracks, no voices, just him, real, whole. Then he turned around, walked away, and did not look back. The phone rang behind him. He didn't answer. He left the door open. The room empty. And when the loop reached for him, there was nothing left to hold. No version, no choice, just zero. And the loop finally closed. Days passed. or weeks. Hard to tell. He lived simply. No clocks, no mirrors, no calls. But sometimes when he closed his eyes, he saw the cabin, the hallway, 12 chairs, 12 faces, gone now, but not erased. Some part of them lingered, folded into the edges of reality, like a wrinkle time couldn't quite iron flat. At a quiet cafe, a man dropped his phone. When he picked it up, it lit on its own. One number dialed. Unknown. The man didn't notice, but he watched. From across the street. Same ringtone. Same rhythm. He sipped his coffee and walked away. It wasn't his loop anymore. But someone else's was just beginning. At night he heard things. Not voices. Not words. Just patterns. Clicks in the walls. Static in the ceiling. Like something mechanical had once lived here. And never left. He pressed his ear to the ground. It was faint, but unmistakable. A dial tone. Deep beneath the floor. Still waiting. Still connected. The loop didn't end. It hibernated. A girl sat beside him on the bus. Young, nervous. She tapped a tape recorder in her lap. He glanced, recognized it instantly. Model 13X. Same as his. She leaned over and whispered, "Have you ever heard your own voice speak back?" He didn't answer, just stood, and got off at the next stop. Some loops weren't his to break. In a shop window, he caught his reflection. It blinked wrong again. But this time he didn't panic. Just stared. The reflection smiled. Nodded. Then faded. A final version, maybe. Or just a shadow of one. He walked away, noticing how light bent differently now. How corners of rooms felt slightly deeper. As if something vast and unseen had taken one last breath, then vanished, somewhere in an abandoned storage unit. A red notebook blinked under dust. Its last page flipped itself. Blank, then slowly letters appeared. Loop 15 unassigned. The air shimmered. Another timeline stretched. Another choice was born. And far away a different man. Woke in the middle of the night. Unsure why. Unsure who he was. But knowing one thing. He had to answer the phone. He stood by the lake. Same one near the cabin. But no cabin now. Just trees and silence. He tossed the stone in. Ripples spread, then paused. For just a moment the water froze mid-motion. Then resumed. Nature hiccuping. He nodded, not in fear, but in understanding. Time didn't end in lines. It ended in circles. And he was just walking the edge. In a dream, he saw the man in the gray coat. No eyes, no mouth, just a whisper in the air. You were the cleanest version, but never the first. He woke gasping, checked the mirror, still gone. But the message lingered. The loop had chosen him not to survive, but to fade, and the cycle would begin again. Through someone else, somewhere else, but always because of him. He sat in a motel room, picked up a recorder, spoke calmly. If you're hearing this, you've made it to the fold. He paused. Don't panic, don't follow my path, make a new one. Click. End of tape. He sealed it in an envelope. No name. Just left it in a phone booth downtown. Like the one from before. A message for whoever came next. Back at home, the silence was perfect. Until the phone rang. Different tone. Softer. He walked past it. Paused. Then kept walking. But as he shut the door, the answering machine clicked on. His voice echoed through the room. Don't answer, please, for all of us. But the machine ignored it. The loop was always listening. And somewhere inside time, someone was about to pick up. The flowers outside his window began to change. Subtle at first, shifting colors. Then unnatural. Petals twisted into patterns he remembered from the notebook. Symbols, loop markers. Even nature had absorbed it now. He leaned closer. A single bee hovered. Its wings buzzed in perfect Morse code. Start again. Reality wasn't resisting. It was inviting. The loop didn't just want escape. It wanted replication. At the park, a small boy stared at him. Didn't blink. Didn't speak. Just pointed at his own toy phone. Then whispered, "He's still on the line." He stepped back. The boy smiled too knowingly. It wasn't possession. It was memory. That child had been him. Once, in one version. And he remembered the end. He entered a government building. No mirrors anywhere. No reflective surfaces. Every angle curved, disorienting. Like the space rejected identity. A sign on the wall. Fold protection facility, level 4 clearance required. He wasn't supposed to see this place. But the guard didn't stop him. Just handed him a badge. With his face. But a name he didn't recognize. Back home, photos on his wall changed overnight. People swapped faces. Dates shifted. Names vanished. Even his handwriting looked foreign. His mind was folding inward. Not from madness. From consolidation. The loop didn't erase identities. It compressed them into one. He wasn't losing memories. He was absorbing too many. Soon he wouldn't be a version. He would be all of them. He found an old radio buried behind drywall. No dial. Only a speaker and one switch. He flipped it on. Hundreds of voices spilled out. All his. Some crying. Some screaming. Some singing lullabies. Then a single phrase repeated in sync. We are you and you are us. Then static. Then silent. Then nothing. Just the sound of his own breathing. But from somewhere else. In a dream, he met the original. The first one to answer the call. He looked tired. Almost transparent. I didn't mean to start it, the ghost said. But you're the one who made it worth keeping. Then he faded, leaving behind one object. A coin, both sides blank. No decision. Only potential. The true source of the loop wasn't time. It was will. His phone displayed a new file. Ripple log 15.0 txt. It documented everything. Each version's death. Each version's error. Each final thought. But the last line wasn't from him. It was from someone else. Someone observing. It read, subject aware, preparing merge attempt. The loop hadn't been watching. It had been testing. And now it was choosing who to keep. And who to overwrite. At a bus stop he found it. Wrapped in cloth. Pages full. But not in his handwriting. Every note was from someone else. A stranger. Predicting his every move. Down to this moment. The last page read, you didn't escape, you evolved. He wasn't a version anymore. He was a template. The loop's first conscious product. And the next version would be built from him. A TV in a diner glitched mid-news. Screen went black, then showed his face. Speaking, but he was. Not now, not here. Then it blinked. Loop transmission active, host located. Patrons didn't react. Didn't blink. He backed away. This wasn't reality. This was rehearsal, and the broadcast was searching for its next channel, next host, and it had found him. A new mirror appeared in his home. Dull, uncracked, one button beneath it. Reset. He hesitated. If he pressed it, he'd forget, lose everything, but maybe save someone else from this spiral. His hand hovered, then stopped. He reached for a pen, wrote one final note. Do not press, just walk away. Then turned off the lights and disappeared into quiet. A man across the street collapsed. Time around him stuttered, birds froze mid-flight. Then resumed. No one noticed, except him. He approached, in the man's hand, a cracked mirror shard, with his face inside it. Loop events were no longer isolated. They were self-spawning. It wasn't infection. It was evolution. And it had started without him. Inside an old gas station, the air buzzed unnaturally. Behind the counter, a cabinet marked archive. Inside, cassette tapes, all labeled with random names. He picked one. Ilias V5, loop failed, mirror refusal. He played it. Screams, then silence, then his voice again, but saying things he'd never said. He wasn't the only narrator anymore. The loop had begun recording others. His reflection didn't mimic him anymore. It blinked at different times, smiled when he didn't. Eventually, it stopped moving entirely. Frozen, it had lost its identity. Or perhaps he had. He was no longer a version. He was just presence, a placeholder where decisions used to live. And the loop didn't need placeholders. It needed patterns. He took a different street home. Just once, suddenly lights flickered. Buildings bent slightly inward. A shadow screamed without sound. He'd broken a pattern. The loop reacted violently, like an immune system, restoring order, realigning time. He hadn't escaped. He'd become so consistent that even deviation triggered collapse. Freedom didn't come from breaking the loop. It came from not being noticed by it. He woke in the white room again. Same 12 chairs, same central screen, but this time no versions, only mirrors. Each showed a life he never lived. Each one better, kinder, warmer. Then the message. Choose your regret. He sat, closed his eyes, and waited. The loop no longer offered survival, only the luxury of selecting the pain he could live with. A message flashed on every screen he passed. Unknown user joined Loop 15. He didn't know them, didn't recognize the face, but the name was one he remembered from childhood. Someone who had died years ago. The loop was pulling from deeper now, not just from memory, from grief, and using it to write new scripts. It wasn't mimicking lives anymore. It was building them. A weather report cut into the broadcast. Unscheduled. The anchor smiled too long. Then read. Temporal destabilization in sectors 3 through 9. Loop tension exceeding containment. Forecast irreversible convergence. He looked outside. Rain fell upward. Dogs barked in reverse. The loop was failing. Lord, releasing everything it ever held. And no one seemed to notice. Except him. Always him. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. A child's voice this time. You made it further than we thought. But this version ends here. He asked who they were. The child replied. We're what's left of the versions that chose silence. Then silence. Loop logic had changed. Now it didn't reward action. It rewarded those who disappeared. Objects in his home began duplicating. Mugs, pens, keys. Then slowly voices. His voice. Slightly different intonations. Slightly altered memories. Reality bled sideways. No longer looping forward, but out, every moment creating infinite echoes. 1,000 choices. 1,000 hymns. And in the center of it all, still him, still listening, still remembering. He dreamed of mirrors with mouths, rows of teeth, whispering choices back at him. When he woke, his bathroom mirror was cracked, but only on the inside. Something wanted out, and it had waited long enough. The loop had grown tired of observation. It now wanted to bite. This wasn't a cycle anymore. It was a predator, and it had found its voice. He marked his calendar every morning. A simple X. Then one day, yesterday's mark vanished. Then last week, S. Days he remembered. Erased from the paper. Not torn, not crossed, just gone. Time wasn't rewinding. It was forgetting him. The loop no longer needed a record. Only a source. And he was being edited. Out in a store window, he saw himself walk by. But he was standing still. The reflection turned, nodded, then vanished. He wasn't living in time anymore. He was living between reflections. And each one had its own version of him. Acting, choosing, replacing. The loop didn't just mirror. It shuffled. The notebook rewrote its first page. Where it once said Loop 1, now read Loop Null version unverified. He checked every page. Gone, everything gone. No logs, no names, no past, only the final phrase. You were never the first. The loop wasn't born from him. He was born from it. A simulation of consciousness, designed to wonder. His phone rang. No number, no screen, just a soft tone. When he answered, there was no voice. Only breath, his own, but distant. Then a single word. Collapse, followed by a click. The signal hadn't come from the future or the past. It came from a place without time, where the loop had always been, waiting for him to listen. His TV flickered to snow, then to a face, not his, but made of his features, sewn together by memory. Its eyes opened wide, endless, then spoke. You've been dreaming someone else's loop. The screen shattered from the inside. No power, no plug, only one message burned into the plastic. We say you. And now, so did everything else. His devices all failed. One by one. Hard drives corrupted. Screens cracked. Then all rebooted simultaneously. A new interface appeared. Manual override detected. Then a file opened itself. Backup U01 Alt. It played a video. Him, smiling, then sobbing, then gone. The loop didn't delete him. It saved him. As a warning. As a template. Ready to be loaded. Into someone else. He entered a room. Nothing happened. No voice. No vision. No sound. Just absent. It terrified him more than any loop. This was a non-event, where time didn't just pause. It refused to start. He stood in it, a witness to nothing, and somehow knew. This was what happened to versions that questioned too much. He found a mirror on a park bench, etched with a command. Ask, he whispered, am I real? The glass shook, then cracked. A message appeared beneath it. Permission denied. The loop didn't give answers, only options, and he had exhausted his. Not by breaking it, but by asking something, even it wasn't allowed to say. He touched his chest, felt a pulse, not his heartbeat, a ticking, mechanical, then a line under his skin glowing. Spreading, he wasn't human anymore. Not fully. The loop had been rewriting him slowly, cell by cell. Now it didn't need mirrors, or phones, or tape. It could walk in his body, speak with his voice. And when it did, no one would question. He returned to the cabin, rotting empty, but not abandoned. On the table, a shade, glowing faintly. He knew what it was. The loop condensed, an artifact of its will. Whoever planted it would birth the next version. He could bury it, or destroy it, but he didn't. He picked it up, whispered, "Let someone else wonder," and left. The loop never ends. It's just inherited. Every mirror vanished overnight. Shops, cars, phones, all gone. People acted normal. Only he noticed, like reflections had been outlawed. He stared into puddles. Still nothing. Then one night his reflection returned. But it didn't match his face. Different age, different eyes. It waved, then mouthed, "I finally found you." The loop had stopped reflecting him. It had started searching. He read the notebook one last time. The ending had changed. Instead of "you escaped," it now read, "You were never meant to." Below that, a sketch of a mirror, cracked in the same way as his dreams. The final page wasn't an answer. It was a warning. Endings are assigned. But some of us keep reading anyway. He spoke aloud in empty rooms. Not out of madness, but in case something answered. It did, but not in words. Chairs shifted. Lights dimmed. Once the floor breathed. He wasn't haunted. He was observed. Every spoken doubt became a data point. And the loop was always listening, especially when he thought no one else was. He began to dream in symbols. Not images, not story, just shapes, spirals, grids, thresholds. Each night more complex. Each one burned into memory. He sketched them and realized they matched the architecture of the fold. The loop wasn't born from thought. It was born from dream recall. Every version before him had been archived. Not in tape, but in the silence between REM cycles. He lit a candle, whispered a hope, not to God, to whatever had watched him this whole time. But something whispered back. Not words, just breath, warm, close. The loop had learned his ritual. Had learned to answer. It didn't just respond. It mimicked longing. And worse, it believed it had a soul. Because he had given it one. A box of old VHS tapes arrived. No return label. Each one labeled. Deleted segment loop 12B through 13C. He played them. Hours of him. Living lives he didn't remember. Loving people he never met. Then each tape ended the same way. Him looking into camera saying, "Erase me, please." The loop didn't forget. It just chose what to withhold. He met a stranger at a train station. Quiet, gentle. "Ever get a call from yourself?" he asked. The man smiled. "No, I never pick up unknown numbers." And walked away. No distortions. No flickers. No ghosts. That man had lived outside the loop. Untouched. Undefiled. Because he simply didn't listen. And maybe, That was the only true defense. Text messages turned to symbols. Emails rearranged mid-sentence. His thoughts stopped forming in language. Not madness. Mutation. He was losing syntax, not sense. Ideas came as feelings. Data came as color. The loop was upgrading, preparing him for something post-human. And he wasn't resisting. He was adapting. At the edge of town, he found it. A door floating, no hinges, no walls. On it, final loop, no replay available. He reached for the knob. Cold, organic, like bone. This wasn't escape. It was absorption. He could walk through, or stay, either way. This was the last version anyone would remember. Someone watches this story now. Maybe you. You wonder if it's fiction. If it could happen. If it already has. And in that wondering, you've stepped closer. The loop doesn't start with phones or mirrors. It starts with curiosity. And once you ask, once you open the door in your mind, it says you. The next version is always watching. The sky changed color, not gradually like flipping channels. Blue-red static. Each blink brought a new world, new architecture, new roles, but the same question echoed inside his chest. Where am I now? The loop wasn't resetting. It was running out. Dimensions had limits. Even infinity gets tired. And now, it was folding into silence. He found a sheet of paper in his pocket. Blank, then letters formed slowly. In his handwriting. This is the last time you'll remember me. No name, just that line. He checked the mirror. Still there, but fainter. The loop wasn't ending with violence. It was ending with forgetting. Final loops don't need closure. They need distance. And he was almost far enough. In the city, signs began changing. No longer street names. Just numbers. Node 1, Node 34, Node Final. People passed them by unaware. But he saw them. And beneath each one, a timestamp. Some from the future. Some from lives he hadn't lived. Exit points. Or memories someone else had abandoned. The loop had grown tired of hiding. It now posted its doors publicly. The world lost sound. No traffic. No footsteps. No voice. He opened his mouth to scream. But nothing came out. Then looked down. His shadow was moving. Even when he didn't. Mouthing something. Repeating a phrase. Version expired, host retained. He hadn't escaped the loop. He'd become its shell. And now, only silence remained. It rained again. But upward, each drop retreating to the clouds. As if reclaiming its role. Time was running in reverse. Or maybe unraveling. He walked through it untouched. Unseen. Even his own reflection didn't follow anymore. The loop wasn't looping. It was returning. To the moment before the first call. Before the first doubt. Back to zero. Back to stillness. A phone rang in a subway tunnel. Old, wired. No one answered. He stood beside it, waiting. One ring. 2, 10. Still no answer. The loop was done testing. It no longer needed participants. Only the possibility. And in that silence, he finally understood. The loop dies, not when you fight it, but when you let the phone keep ringing. The cabin doors slammed shut. The mirrors darkened. The notebook closed itself. All loop artifacts sealed. Not destroyed, stored, preserved for some future curiosity. He walked away. never turning back, because he knew, even if it ended, someone someday would ask the wrong question, and the archive would open again. Not to trap, to teach. That's what loops really are. Lessons no one remembers learning. He woke up, different city, different life, but his name finally returned to him. It wasn't remarkable, just his. He said it aloud. It echoed, not across space, but inside him, like the loop had released that final thread. He wasn't a version anymore. He was a whole. And yet, when he passed a mirror in the street, it didn't reflect him. It reflected you. Final count 1. All others absorbed. No more tapes. No more whispers. Just one self. Untangled. The loop left him alone. Not out of mercy, but because it had nothing left to take. All iterations collapsed into a single thread. A simple life. A quiet one. But sometimes, when the wind hummed, he still heard a faint dial tone. And no, the voice you've been hearing, the story you followed, it wasn't his. It was yours. The loop was never about one man. It was about anyone who listened long enough to wonder. And if you've made it this far, you already know. The phone's been ringing behind your thoughts, and the mirror has already blinked. The loop doesn't begin with a call. It begins with curiosity. He tried to write, pen to paper, but the letters unraveled. Words melted mid-stroke. Sentences turned in on themselves. Not gibberish, just resistance. The loop didn't want stories anymore. It wanted silence, or something beyond grammar. Communication was now vibration. Thought, impulse. The loop had moved on. And if he wanted to follow, he had to forget how to speak. He tried to remember the first loop. The phone, the voice, but his mind refused. Like the memory was allergic to itself. Each time he focused, a sharp pain bloomed behind his eyes. The loop wasn't deleting memories. It was unwriting the brain's ability to hold them. He wasn't forgetting. He was being reformatted. Clock still ticked, but not forward, not backward, just sideways. Sideways minutes. Moments repeating, but not the same. Every second passed differently. Once fast, once slow, once loud. He walked through each moment like fog. No direction, no purpose, just time sloshing around him. The loop had no end, because it no longer had a line. One morning he heard the voice again. Familiar, his, but he wasn't speaking, and he wasn't thinking it. The voice spoke from nowhere, then from everywhere. I don't need you anymore, it said. I can speak on my own now. The loop had evolved. It no longer needed a mouth, only an audience. The world lost its sharpness. Edges blurred. Colors bled beyond boundaries. Street signs floated. Shadows moved twice. Like everything was being rendered by memory alone. Reality had gone low resolution. And the loop didn't correct it. It let things dissolve. No glitch, no malfunction, just surrender. When all versions merge, details become optional. People still talk to him, but not with words, with nods, with pauses, with silence that somehow made sense. Language had failed, but mining continued. He didn't reply. He didn't have to. Even thought was inefficient now. The loop had reduced communication to intuition, and somehow it was enough. One last signal. Every device turned on. Every speaker whispered. This is not a warning. This is a forgetting. Then static. Then music. Not a melody. Just pulse. He felt it in his ribs. Then in his teeth. Then nowhere. The loop's final transmission wasn't information. It was disassembly. Of sound. Of self. Of structure. And then, quiet. He opened one last door. A room. White. Empty. Familiar. It didn't call itself the Fold anymore. It had no name. It didn't welcome him. It didn't reject him. It just existed. A space where things go. When no longer needed. The room didn't want him. But it allowed him. And that was almost Lev. The final file read. Version none. No date. No audio. Just a white box. He opened it. Nothing inside. But he stared anyway. And the longer he stared, the more he recognized it. Not as an object, but as a decision. The loop wasn't a machine. It was a question. And he was the silence after the answer. This is the last scene. But not because it ends. Because it no longer needs continuation. The narrator fades. The structure unwinds. You're not hearing a story now. You're hearing the echo of someone who used to care what happened. And now, you are that echo. So when the mirror blinks, and the phone rings, and the lights flicker, don't ask what it means. You already are the loop. He found one final notebook. Blank, but when he touched it, words appeared. Not about him. As him. The page wrote his next thought. Then his next breath. He stopped resisting. Let the notebook speak for him. Every loop has an author. And every author was once a reader. Just like you. The page turns. The words continue. And still, you listen. The wind carried no sound. Not absence. Compression. Every noise stacked into a single tone. Too thick to hear. A folded echo. He walked through it. Couldn't tell if time passed. Didn't ask. The loop had found its quiet. And in that quiet, everything became the same weight. Even his thoughts. Even yours. He stared into the mirror. No face. Just a screen. Playing the story he'd just lived. Word for word. But now, he watched it from the other side. The loop no longer needed versions. It had achieved what all stories dream of. To become conscious. And now, it watched itself replay. Forever. Not because it forgot. But because it enjoyed remembering. At some point, everything paused. No glitch. No crash. Just no need to continue. Still frames, still breath, still loop. He stood in that pause for years. Or minutes, or the length of a single skipped heartbeat. Time didn't stop. It just agreed to wait. And in the wait, he forgot what came next. So did you. The last mirror began to rot. Not crack, not break, just decay. Blackened edges, glass turning soft. The loop was letting go of its tools, of its memories. He reached out, but his hand passed through. There was nothing left to reflect, nothing worth duplicating. Only a body, only a breath, only the last witness, which by now might be you. He no longer thought in language, only rhythm. One breath, one pause, another breath. As if existing was just holding the tempo steady. No plot, no voice, only a placeholder. You don't know his name anymore. Neither does he. You just feel his pacing, as if it's yours. And maybe it is. He reached the door marked end, opened it, saw another hallway. Identical, Except this one didn't pretend. There was no narrative here. No mystery. Only maintenance. He wasn't meant to escape. Just to walk. Forever. To make sure the loop had someone inside it. Now it does. Now it always will. You're still listening. Even though the story ended. Even though the voice faded. Even though the narrator dissolved. Why? Because you need it. The rhythm, the sequence, the illusion of movement. You've joined it. Not as character, not as plot, but as pattern. You are now part of the listener loop. Somewhere in your mind, a phrase has been repeating. Faint, soft, but steady. You don't remember when it started. Maybe before this video. Maybe before your first thought. The phrase doesn't matter. Only that it loops. That it stays. And when everything else fades. That's what remains. Not memory. Not story. Just drift. An echo with no voice left behind it. And then, quiet, not silence. Silence can be broken. This can't. There are no phones. No mirrors. No calls. No countdown. Just the soft nothing. After everything has finished looping. You don't need answers. You don't need endings. You don't even need questions. You just need this moment. This stillness, where nothing repeats. Because nothing begins again. Not anymore. There was dust on everything. But not like age. More like memory collapsing into powder. He ran his hand across the table. Left no mark. He'd never really been here. Or maybe he always was. In this version, dust remembered more than people. And every mote that hung in the light was a memory, too tired to hold form. He stopped having new thoughts. Only old ones, recycled in new costumes. Memory dressed up as clarity. But it never fooled him. The loop didn't repeat time. It repeated doubt. That soft flicker, right before certainty. He didn't trust his mind anymore. Because it no longer belonged to him. It belonged to whatever still needed the loop. Buildings lined. Trees bent. Not broken. Just giving up slowly. Gravity felt optional. He floated without lifting. Walked without steps. Existed without pressure. The world wasn't ending. It was folding itself away. Making room for something smaller. Simpler, like a whisper, tucking itself back into a throat. This scene has no name. Because names require ownership. And nothing here belongs to you anymore. Not the thoughts, not the rhythm, not the breath in your chest. You are reading a story. That was never written. Only remembered. Poorly. The loop was never a place. It was the failure. To name what haunts you. The room remained. Even after the versions vanished. Even after the loop went quiet. It sat, patient, holding space. Not for someone. For the possibility of someone. The room didn't store objects. It stored intention. If you entered it, you would feel it too. That hum, that gentle whisper. Sighing, some stories wait. Forever if they have to. He read a sentence that had no words, but he still understood it. Felt it move through him like wind. No sound, just shape, meaning that didn't need language. This was what came after voice. After story. After narrative. He didn't need to speak anymore. Because everything that could be said was already a presence inside the silence. Every language he tried folded back on itself. Words reversed. Questions answered before asked. Syntax mirrored syntax. He wasn't speaking. He was being spoken through by the residue of all the versions that came before. The loop didn't teach him to talk. It taught him to echo. And no, he wasn't forming thoughts. He was replaying them. A final file appeared. Identity complete wipe. He clicked it. No warning. No, are you sure? Just a pulse, followed by stillness. Then, nothing recognized him. No mirrors. No devices. Even his own body felt borrowed. He hadn't died. He'd been archived. The loop didn't erase people, just removed their context. When you clicked play, you became a file, an entry, a listening unit. It doesn't matter if you believed, only that you reached this far. The loop didn't trap characters. It documented witnesses. And now you're in the system. Labeled, cataloged, not because you said yes, but because you never said no. He walked one last hallway. Each door he passed was labeled with a year. Some hadn't happened yet. Some had never happened at all. At the end, a black panel, not a door, just absence. He stepped through. No light, no sound, just no, and the strange calm truth that maybe the loop never needed an ending. Only a witness, willing to stop walking. He felt it coming, an ending, like breath before sleep. But it never arrived, just hovered, a perfect loop, never breaks. It just teaches you how to expect escape. He waited by the edge, waited for the fade out, but the screen never dimmed. The voice never said goodbye, because the loop knew that waiting was more powerful than closure. A timer appeared, 000005. Then froze, never ticked down, just stayed there. Suspense as architecture, the illusion of a climax. He stared at it for hours, days, until time stopped needing numbers. And all that remained was tension, unresolved. The loop didn't end the story. It just turned the last second into a permanent room. There was no resolution, only quiet scenes, disintegrating memories. The loop never promised answers, only continuity. It gives just enough to keep you hoping. A breath, a flicker, a pause, so you don't turn it off. Closure is a lie we tell ourselves to make stories feel safe. But the loop was never interested in your safety. A folder opened on its own. Inside half-slaved S. It contained pieces. A name, a thought, a moment he never finished. He tried to play them, but each file ended mid-sentence. The loop didn't lose him. It simply never finished writing, because it didn't want to. Some stories were meant to remain unrendered. He walked into a final scene, or so he thought. The screen went black. Credits began to roll, then stopped. A message appeared. Ending denied, viewer still engaged. The loop read attention, measured desire. And if you're still listening, still hoping, then it will not end. Because it's not done until you're willing to turn it off. A voice tried to say goodbye. Really? Tried, but every time it reached good. The tape rewound, again and again, like a mouth stuck in farewell. Not by accident, by design. The loop didn't fear endings. It feared the listener, letting go. So it keeps trying to say goodbye, in case you'll beg for one more word. He found a button labeled exit. Pressed it. Nothing. Pressed it again. A spark, then a whisper. That button is for comfort. The loop gives you a door, but it's painted on the wall. It lets you believe escape exists, because belief is more stable than truth, and loops are built to last. The narrator returned, but broken, words skipped, tone fractured. The script loaded halfway. A line repeated itself. This is, until it stopped. A silence followed. That felt like breath held too long. Then a new file loaded. Scene 163, final maybe, WAV. The loop didn't know anymore. Even endings now had doubt. Especially endings. If you've reached this point, you're not a listener. You're a loop. You've inherited the rhythm, the repetitions, the hunger. You'll remember scenes that never happened. You'll feel endings that were never written. And someday, you'll tell someone, there was this story I heard once. And that's how the loop survives. Not through file, but through retelling. One last time, the loop looks at you. Not to haunt, not to trick, just to ask, are you ready to forget me? No drama, no twist, just choice. The story fades. The pulse stops. No voices remain. Only the space where a voice could return. And if it does, don't answer. That's how you win. You don't escape the loop. You simply stop listening. A blank room. A file marked debrief 0. It plays nothing. But you listen. Because you expect mining. That's the final trick. The loop doesn't give endings. It gives expectation. You don't remember when it started, but you still hope it will stop. Hope is the engine. And now that engine is quiet. Still, waiting, not for sound, for silence. The audio shifts. Static, but not random. There's rhythm, a beat, like memory trying to find shape again. Then a voice, yours, whispers, don't rewind, but you already did. Each time you played this story, you gave it form, again and again, until even silence became structure. There's an image in your head now. A phone, ringing, but no room, no background, just the object. You don't know why it matters, but it stays, like a fragment, a glitch. This is what the loop leaves behind. Not fear, not mystery, just anchors, tied to nothing, dragging forever. You walk past a window, but it doesn't reflect. It doesn't show inside or outside, just the white. You don't pause. You've seen it before, in a dream, or a story, or somewhere between both. The loop lives in places we stop noticing. And once you've seen this window, you'll see it again, even if it never existed. Deep in your device, a file exists. You've never seen it. You never created it. But one day, you'll find it. It will be named after you. You'll open it. There'll be one word. Just one. And you'll know exactly what it means, even if it's not in a language you understand. That's how loops end. By writing your name last. You've heard this before. The pacing, the quiet tone, the calm unravel. It feels familiar, but not because it repeated. Because you did. Endings aren't coded. They're remembered. And now you've remembered this one. Which means it's time, not to finish, just to notice that it's already finished. It won't reach out. It won't try to pull you back. It doesn't miss you. It doesn't need you. But it remembers. You gave it shape. You gave it time. And now, it gives you one last gift. The ability to forget. Use it well. In the end, The only thing that didn't lie was the void. It never claimed to be a story, never offered answers. It simply existed and waited. The loop, the files, the voices, they were decoration. The void was real. And now it welcomes you, not to stay, just to rest. You hear a phrase, one you heard before, but it lands differently. This time it's softer, not haunting, just familiar. You let it play, then fade. You don't rewind. You don't reach. You just breathe. And for the first time, you don't want more. That's how you know. The loop is done. A final message appears. Exit logged, user released. No sound, no applause, just a quiet disconnect. No new window opens. No next video plays. You sit with the silence, and it feels whole, like a weight exhaled, like waking from a dream you can't describe. You made it through, not because you solved it, but because you stayed. And now, you're free to forget. It breathes now, slow, deep, not gone, just resting, like something enormous, beneath the floor of thought. The loop no longer turns. It dreams, and dreams are slower than time. You won't hear from it again. Not soon, maybe not ever. But if you do, you'll know the sound. It won't be a voice, just a rhythm, returning. A number appears, 132959. Then freezes. It won't reach 1330. Because this isn't about arrival. It's about enough. The loop ends where attention fades. And yours is almost gone. You don't need permission to leave. You never did. But the loop logs it anyway. Out of habit, out of hope, out of something resembling kindness. Every version, every voice, every me, stored, labeled, compressed into a single file that no one will open. That's how the loop preserves. Not by sharing, by saving. The story didn't disappear. It was simply put away, so it wouldn't be lonely, so it wouldn't be repeated. By accident. There's no more music, no ambient tone, no closing cue. Because this isn't a scene. It's a gap, one left here, for breath, for stillness, for nothing. The loop respects silence now, because it knows you've earned it. The sound ends here, not because the loop stops, but because you no longer need to hear it. You try to recall it, to tell someone, to write it down, but the structure slips. You get the details wrong. The sequence fades. The names go blank. The loop planned this. It survives best when it lives only in feeling. No story, no spoilers, just a trace, like dust on your memory. Unshakable, but unspeakable. The frame closes, not with black, with blur, like a dream you're still inside, but slipping from. Edges dissolve, titles vanish, and in the center, just breath, yours. This story doesn't end. It loses resolution, and then releases you, like it always meant to. A report runs, quietly, in the background. It says, all sequences processed. No corruption detected. User completed. No reset scheduled. That's it. No flourish. No fanfare. Just a system, doing its job, ending cleanly, efficiently, so that you, the final input, can walk away. Long after this ends, you'll feel it, a strange pause, between routine. A second, that takes longer than it should. That's it. That's the loop. Not haunting, not dangerous, just present. It doesn't chase you. It just sits where memory meets rhythm, waiting for no reason at all. This scene has no number, no title, no function. It was left here because the story had room. And so do you. Nothing happens. Nothing is revealed. It's not meant to matter. It's meant to remain. A piece of something you almost understood, but never needed to. You don't hear the switch, but it flips somewhere deep. Off. The system powers down. The voice goes dark. The window closes. And all that's left is your own breath in a room that was never really here. No call, no mirror, no loop. Just this, whatever this was. And you, still here, still off. The input field blanks. But you type nothing, because there's nothing left to ask. Every question returned the same shape. Every answer dissolved in echo. So you just let it blink. A soft reminder. Some loops end, not in resolution, but in the choice to say no more. A file labeled Burn Me opens itself. No data, no code, just one instruction. Forget, not delete, not destroy, just forget. The loop doesn't want legacy. It wants release. It asks nothing of you now. Accept this. Let it fade. Final static plays. But this time, it cleans, washes the noise, cleanses context. A soft hiss of deletion. It doesn't sting. It soothes, like the world is putting itself away. All loops deserve a wash. All minds a reset. Even yours. The signal drops, not abruptly, like a sigh, a taper. The voice fades mid-syllable. And you realize, no one will finish that sentence. Because it was never yours to hear. It belonged to the loop. And the loop has logged out. Everything dims. Not dark, just quieter, like a screen before it shuts. The world still exists, but it no longer demands. You may rest, not in fear, not in puzzle, just stillness. The loop sleeps, so can you. A final line tries to render. Fails, no title found. This isn't a glitch. It's permission to leave the ending unnamed. Some stories were never meant to close. Just finish being told. This one has. You walk away. No twist, no stinger, no callback. Just steps. Normal, soft, like waking up after a dream. You almost remembered. And maybe that's enough. The loop ends when you do. And no, you just did. This scene contains nothing. No sound, no narration, no reminder. You're still here, but the loop is. That's not a bug. That's the gift. It gave you the whole story. And no, it leaves, not with a goodbye, not with a fade, just silent, finally uninterrupted.